Hi, my name is Kaja Čufer and I'm coming from Slovenia, from University of Ljubljana, the Faculty of Natural Sciences and Engineering. And today I'm going to present you our paper called Designing Movable Chain-like Structures with 3D Modeled Elements. The purpose of our paper was to study the process of creating a textile-like 3D structure by assembling individual elements into a mesh. We focused on using 3D printing in the field of textile design, and the entire design process was created in the Blender software program, which is actually a 3D program. The design process began with test part, where we determined the design method, which was followed by method verification process. In this stage, we firstly modeled single elements, connecting them into a textile-like structure, creating simulations, and lastly creating some patterns. We also 3D printed a sample of a textile-like structure to get the physical touch and physical appearance of the textile-like structure. So the determination of the design method began by using a simple torus shape, where it was connected into a textile-like structure, which was further on simulated on an object. The method verification process was focused on modeling single elements which were inspired by Celtic knots. Each element was created using different technique. For example, Dara knot was created using braid knot, and you can see the modeling process from A to C. The endless knot was created using Bezier circle template. Again, you can see the modeling process from A to C. And Salomon knot was created using Torus knot plus, where the number of spins were increased and the inner circumference was reduced. Further on, we connected those single elements into a textile-like structure where we had to be careful on two things. Firstly, the slope of the elements, and secondly, the distance between the elements. The slope allows us decompatibility, so the elements fit together, and the distance between the elements allows us movement. As mentioned, we also created some patterns. They were repeating patterns where we used different shapes, colors, and sizes, and two different forms of one knot was used. One of the knot was a Celtic knot, which was modeled, and the other one was its variation. We used white and blue colors, and there is a monochromatic pattern for comparison. Here are some examples of the patterns that we created, and you can see here that the white and blue color emphasizes the difference between the elements that were used, and the monochromatic pattern, for example, is focused more on the empty space between the elements. So the empty space gives us a certain pattern. Here are two more examples. And for example, in the example 4, you can also see an interesting shadow that was created when the light came through the structure. As mentioned, we also created some simulations of textile-like structures where the purpose was to observe the behavior and the movement. We used physics in Blender, where we had to determine active and passive bodies, where active bodies were simulated dynamically. In our case, each single element represented active bodies, and a passive bodies remained static, which in our case was an object. Here are two more examples of the simulations on a different object, and you can see that the size of the elements affects the wrinkling. The smaller elements provide better fit. So we learned through simulations that larger number of smaller elements, that means higher density, means better fit and movability. As our final simulation, we presented textile-like structure on a human body as a part of a clothing. However, the use of plastic materials in direct contact with the skin as everyday clothing is still an open area of research, as the materials do not yet allow such comfortable and breathable clothing to be produced. As mentioned in the beginning, we also 3D printed a sample of a textile-like structure, which referred to the test part. We used SLA technology, which allowed us high precision and high quality, and the purpose of 3D printing was to check the flexibility and the strength of the textile-like structure and to find out the appropriate size of each element. In the 3D printing process, we shown that the textile-like structure can be movable even if it consists of rigid elements. For conclusion, I would like to point out again that throughout the process of modeling, animating and rendering the textile-like structures, we learned that the individual elements of the textile-like structure must be considerably small and dense to create better draping and movability. Finally, further research could be done related to color. We could use, for example, 3D color printing, and further research could be conducted on the materials and physical properties of the elements, such as what happens when an elastic material or a different printing technique is used. Nevertheless, development in various areas of creating textile-like 3D structures are possible, whether in terms of structure, materials, or color.